Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into some undeniably documented history. We're getting right into primary sources, the actual historical receipts, if you will, that expose systemic racism within the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, stretching all the way from the 1940s right through to the 1970s. If you're the kind of person who likes to skip the hearsay and go straight to the hard evidence to see how institutions really operate, well, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to let the historical records speak completely for themselves. Okay, let's dive into this. Right off the bat, we're looking at a directive straight from the RCMP Commissioner's office in 1941, and this is regarding 2 Black applicants. The wording here is just wow. The strategy wasn't to formally ban them because, that would raise the question of policy. Instead, they used this incredibly chilling approach. They let them write the educational test with the explicit and documented hope that we shall find that they have not successfully passed. It's literally a written admission of a discriminatory policy operating quietly behind the scenes to completely dodge public scrutiny. Section 1. The 1941 Color Barrier. So, let's meet those applicants. These were Leslie Bryan and Alfred Coward, 2 22-year-old men from Sydney, Nova Scotia. Now, before they ever tried joining the RCMP, they had actually received notices of enlistment for the Canadian military, but felt entirely unwelcomed during their first interviews. Seeking a different way to serve, they turned to the force. Now, what's really interesting about this is that we have the literal receipts right in front of us. These are the actual typed memos exchanged between the Sydney subdivision and Halifax's H division back in October 1941. It's one thing to, just hear about historical barriers, but seeing the bureaucratic machinery plotting in black and white, it's wild. These documents explicitly show the chain of command maneuvering to quietly reject these young men. They're literally sharing that this problem had come up before and asking how to treat the applications without causing a stir. And the roadblocks they ended up facing were, honestly, completely absurd. Alfred Coward, he actually passed the intelligence test, but he was half an inch short of the height requirement. And get this, the superintendent actually advised him to use a spine-lengthening company over in England to stretch himself out to the right height. No way, right? Meanwhile, Leslie Bryan easily met all the physical requirements, but then supposedly failed the intelligence test. It was this perfectly executed catch-22. They stalled both of them without ever having to give a direct no. Section 2. The human toll. Because these men were never formally refused in writing, the entrance procedure was just intentionally dragged on and on without any proper closure. The whole point was to make them just give up. But here's the thing. The RCMP's incredibly low expectations absolutely did not dictate their futures. Just look at Alfred Coward's actual capabilities. He went back to Sydney, got into the steel industry, and worked in steam engineering. We're talking about precise, highly complex calculations of gas and water usage. Plus, he pursued a university education and even ended up hosting 2 different radio shows at CJFX, one for classical music and one for jazz. He was this incredibly intelligent, capable guy, and the force just completely missed out. Section 3. Lorne White's 1947 application. Fast forward a bit to 1947, and we have a third applicant attempting to break that color barrier. Meet Dr. Lorne White. He was one of 13 kids and the son of Reverend Dr. William A. White, who was actually the British Empire's only Black World War I chaplain. Now, Lorne applied after his first year of university, and unlike the guys in 1941, he successfully passed both the physical and the psychological exams. He cleared every single hurdle they put in front of him. But despite all that success, his dream of joining the force would be abruptly halted. During his personal interview with an RCMP inspector, White was told something pretty shocking. The inspector said, "When we send a man out on a detachment, we don't want to have to think of his race, his religion, or anything." Take a second to really think about that quote. It perfectly captures how an institution can use this polite, pragmatic-sounding bureaucratic language to keep a discriminatory roadblock firmly in place. It literally frames the applicant's very existence as an inconvenience to the institution. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what the RCMP missed out on by turning him away. Lorne White didn't let this stop him. He went on to earn a BA and a B.Ed. He had this amazing 21-year teaching career, eventually retiring as a vice principal. He was an incredibly accomplished singer, too. He performed on CBC's Sing Along Jubilee, sang at the 1988 Olympics, and over his lifetime he received 4 major national medals, including the Queen Elizabeth II and Silver Jubilee medals. The sheer caliber of character they rejected was literally astounding. Section 4. Decades of Systemic Bias. Now, you might be wondering, were these rejections in the 1940s just isolated incidents? Were they just a product of their time? Well, let's look at the actual documents and see. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds. We've looked at 1941 and 1947, but as we move right into the civil rights era of the 1960s and even into the 1970s, the official personnel records prove that race and color remained documented issues of concern. Evaluators were still actively making connections between someone's ethnic background and their work ethic. Check out this shocking excerpt from 1963. This is from the personnel file of Jim Potts, who, by the way, actually did go on to become a respected RCMP inspector and a First Nations elder. The evaluator literally wrote, "This applicant's father is an Indian, but he is a hard worker. That but is doing a lot of heavy lifting, isn't it?" Potts himself later saw this file and had this incredibly ironic reaction, saying, "Thank God my father was a hard worker, otherwise, the institution just naturally assumed his heritage was at odds with a strong work ethic." And it kept going. Read this quote from an African-Canadian applicant's file in 1971. The evaluator notes the applicant's Black ancestry and writes, "The fact that his ethnic origins are evident does not appear to have affected his character, and I cannot see this having an adverse effect on his work potential at this time." I mean, wow. In 1971, the deeply ingrained prejudice of the institution still naturally assumed that Black ancestry would be a detriment to character, treating it as some big surprise when it wasn't. So what does this all mean? Having these receipts lets us learn directly from past mistakes rather than just pointing fingers. And it leaves us with a really important question to wrap things up. If history gives us the ability to measure progress, how does an institution effectively move forward and build trust today when its foundation was so deeply and documentably built on exclusion? It's absolutely something for all of us focused learners to really chew on. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the history around you.